I'm Toby, and hello, faithful viewers and listeners of Toby's Happy Times and Places. It's an utter pleasure to be a guest on here. I am Anthony Townsend, and what do? I do all sorts of things. I do a bit of acting. I do a bit of voice work. I do a bit of singing sometimes, some hosting, interviewing, amongst other things. So I can be found here and there doing this and that, mostly. And today I'm here about something that's definitely feels like a happy time and place for me, time in the Rani.
Welcome to Happy Times and Places, or as this edition is called, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Time in the Rani. I do love, although I don't know them hugely well, I do, I suppose, but the way that we know people is not to necessarily speak with them in person. Although we have events and hung out and met up for a drink every now and again. Anthony Townsend, who's been an important part of Doctor Who fandom, but also more importantly has devoted their life to, working in the charity sector and generally just trying to add a bit of sparkle to life. Has had quite a serious medical diagnosis. I'm not going to go into but trust me. And is finding themselves in a position where a little bit of financial support might just help at a very, very difficult time. So there will be a GoFundMe link in the blurb for this, and I'll probably do one as a voiceover at the end as well. If you can give anything, because as you'll see, Anthony is a tonic and has chosen for me Time in the Rani, not one of Doctor Who's most popular hour and a bits, and certainly not in Hadoke Towers. But having watched episode 1 and liked lots of it, but also highlighted why I was very grumpy about it and always have been, I'm now going to go into episode 2 with fresh eyes and a spring in my step, and perhaps a little pirouette as well. So press play on Time in the Rani, episode 2 in 3, 2, 1. Now, I didn't really mention the opening titles last episode. I mean, this was, apart from the rocks, which I remember my friend Anton at school going, they look like bits of plastic, and they do look a bit like bits of plastic, but the rest of it looked $1 million at the time, and I still think looks pretty good. But I suppose the bubble traps are slightly compromised by the fact that the TARDIS is in a bubble in the opening title. It's like, so bubbles are a thing that you can do. Now, and I seem to recall on episode 4, didn't they? They used the shot of the face, which isn't quite as distinct as that. I don't think I like the wink either. And I have to say, I'm very Galloping Galaxies, the logo there. I do think it's Doctor Who's worst logo by a country mile. But that is where the criticism will stop. Handsome Mark Greenstreet, who's attacking his part as grumpy good guy with a lot of verve. And how's Mel going to get out of this? Because we've only seen these blow up. It's going to land on some water. And it's beautiful. The colour of that water is beautiful as well. Look at that. And I always think of sort of water in quarries or whatever as being all rather mucky. So, and obviously we come back to quarries with beautifully coloured water later in the McCoy era. I'm thinking of Greatest Show in the Galaxy. But it's great. It gives it a lovely alien look. Oh, she's screaming away, isn't she? She has to do a lot of... It's odd because by this time, the cliche of the screaming companion was very much something talked of. And I mean, I remember my brothers and sisters saying, that's a great cut of him doing that thing to the explosion. Lovely little cheat, the explosion of what the Doctor's doing. But my brothers and my sister, used to slag off Sarah Jane for being the one that screamed. Well, Mel screams a lot. And it's odd because that cliche was now part of the the lexicon of things that you level at Doctor Who. So I wonder why they made Mel scream so much. I suppose you have to scream if you're in jeopardy. I suppose you have to. People don't scream in the same way on television anymore, do they? I don't know. I might be talking out of my hat. I'm not wearing a hat. Because people have to show that they're in danger and they're in jeopardy. But do people scream? I don't know. I don't know if you'd be allowed to as much these days. But it's hard. It's hard to show, peril, jeopardy, especially when you're acting to nothing. But she was screaming quite a lot. There's a lot of his banging his nose, isn't he? They're attracted to the screaming and the slapstick seem to be odd choices for a programme that's reputation is a little bit in the doldrums for being a bit theatrical. Like this, throws that, boom. But all that stuff's great. So there's quite a lot of contrasts of stuff going on. I've got a feeling, I think they might have shown, that's a great shot. I think they might have shown the Tetraps face in a trailer, which means that its final reveal is a bit of a waste of time because it's already been spoiled. But I think he's very wise, Andrew Morgan, who's a very good director and a very experienced director at this point. And they tried to get him to do Time Flight. I know that. So they've been after him for Doctor Who for some time. He's a nice guy, Andrew, as well. And yes, Donald Pickering, veteran actor Donald Pickering, Doctor Who magazine had said, I mentioned this in episode 1, but didn't complete what I was going to say, which was I had just started collecting, bootleg Doctor Who episodes, and I'd got the Faceless Ones, episode 1, and I'd loved Captain Blade, and I didn't know the actor, and it was Donald Pickering. But I don't think I put 2 and 2 together quite when I read about it first. But then eventually I did, because I remember going back to Doctor Who magazine and I think thinking odd that it had described Donald Pickering as veteran actor Donald Pickering, and the dot said who played Captain Blade in the Faceless Ones, and actually also he's Ison in the Keys of Marinus, so he'd done 2 Doctor Who's, but Doctor Who magazine didn't mention that. I remember at the time going, they don't know what they're talking about, being a jumped up little pipsqueak that I was. Was I? I don't know. I think I just wanted to. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I wanted. I still don't know what I want. I like his mane. But anyway, Donald Pickering was in the Faceless Ones as. It's a great location, this actually. Well done to, I guess that's production manager Tony Redston, maybe. Or whoever. Ah, there we go. Another scream from Bonnie Langford there. So the Tetraps have got. That's like a glitter gun, isn't it? For this one, poor old Bonnie Langford is just. Oh, that's a really tricky thing to have to do, and I feel for her a bit. So the Icona has sprayed the Tetrap with tinsel and glitter. It's glitter he's sprayed it with. Tinsel is what's in the space corridor. Are curious ways of, well, they're ways of suggesting space and futuristics. But the Tetraps are interesting, aren't they? Because they're obviously sort of bat-like. They've got that nice idea of the sort of 4 eyes, so they can see at 360 degrees, which they then try and suggest with the sort of clever, the mix of the camera and then the melding and the picture, forming on whatever they're concentrating on. I like that. That's an attempt to do something different. I don't think the masks are hugely successful. They're sort of like bat dogs, aren't they? But it's an attempt at a scary monster. And they've got those horrible tongue things. You don't often see the monster's tongue unless it's one which has you could see the human mouth underneath. So it's all a good way of getting monsters on. You didn't see many monsters on telly in 1987. That's a great shot. That's a great model effect, because obviously that's built into the that's a trick shot, because that's not actually there. I love a model. Prefer a bit of a model to a bit of CGI sometimes, But yeah, I think the Lacurtians are a good design, because you get the total performance. And I don't know if that stuff on their head is supposed to be a hat or it's their skull, in which case is the headband part of their skull. But I don't mind that. You have that same thing with the Ice Warriors, where what's the mask, what's the helmet, you did until they decided to just anyway latterly. But I quite like the idea that you're not quite sure. Because it doesn't matter, so long as it all sort of fits together as a whole. And how do we feel about the question mark jumper? Because his costume is actually great. I love his jacket, and I love the fact that his jacket is clearly full of gubbins. I mean, I think we know now that it's got Sylvester McCoy's sides, isn't it? Which is the small pages of script that you've got for that day. But I think his costume is brilliant, but I'd lose the jumper. And it's funny because some people don't like the question marks on Davison and Baker's collars, but I liked those as a kid. I thought, it's a nice little touch. But it's almost like somebody went, we quite like that idea, so now let's go bananas with it. And it's been said probably better than I'm going to say it now, but there's nothing like emphasising how enigmatic you are. To do the complete opposite of being, that's a contradiction in terms, and forced eccentricity is self-conscious eccentricity is not eccentricity, it's being annoying, as any grown man who says "methinks, my liege" in a normal conversation in a pub set these days. You're not eccentric. You're well. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but yes. Wanda Bentham, Cumberbatch Mater, who was in The Faceless Ones with Donald Pickering, and in fact was great friends with Donald Pickering. And in fact, I think Donald Pickering is the godfather of Benedict Cumberbatch, who is Wanda Bentham's son, and I was at university with Benedict Cumberbatch. He was a little below me, but we hung around in the same circles. Well, what happened was I was mates with some people a couple of years below me, and we all did plays together. But when I finished, Benedict Cumberbatch came up under them, and when I finished the sort of parts in the plays that I used to play, he played, so he was my sort of replacement. I've never got to be sub for Cumberbatch, so the roles were never reversed. I just wasn't. I've never even been on the same team, but he was a fine actor. He was an excellent actor even then, and he actually befriended me on Facebook when. He was on it, which I thought was very nice because we didn't know each other particularly well. We sort of knew who each other were. Real tears from Wanda Bentham. See, he's of good stock. You don't see real tears in classic Who very often, and there's a real dignity and a proper acting that Wanda Bentham does there. And yeah, Wanda Bentham and Donald Pickering were mates. So it's quite nice that they're in The Faceless Ones. And in this, Wanda Bentham is on the Image of the Fendal DVD, which was the one I know they struggled to get people for the commentary of the documentary, and yet she's not on the DVD for this. I haven't watched the special features. I don't know if they managed to get her did they do any extra documentaries for this? But we couldn't get her for The Faceless Ones, which is odd because she's always somebody that I know has cooperated and happily given interviews for magazines and stuff. So and she was also friends with my friend Del Del Henney, who was she was in a thing. Well, there was a time when she was in a thing with him called Fallen Hero, but there was a time when Wanda Bentham was, the TV leading lady, the Lotus Eaters. She's an absolutely beautiful woman with stunning eyes, and she's a good actress. And she was in so much of the Gold Robber. She was in all sorts of stuff, and deservedly so. So that annoyed me when I think her and Benedict Cumberbatch's dad, Timothy Carlton, were in an episode of Sherlock, and one of the papers went, Benedict Cumberbatch's parents are in it, but they are actors. They've got equity cards and everything. It's like, it's Wanda Bentham. Oh, come on! I can understand the person on the street now, maybe not knowing one, but somebody who writes about television for a living, having to sort of apologetically go, it's Benedict Cumberbatch's mom. The Rani has just then been hoisted by her own petard, because that was her disguised as Mel, wasn't it? The disguise was too good, which is quite a funny switcheroo. The music's gone into this is a comedy scene mode again, but this is this is all stuff that you could sort of get away with if it was done on stage. But it is a bit it's a bit sort of TV. Yeah, it's choreographed for a one take. It's nowadays what you do is if you had a scene where they had to sort of tumble with each other, that's quite funny though, just to take a wig off. You do that in separate shots and stuff like that. Whereas that all had to be done to be captured in one sequence and a multi-camera. So we've got to acknowledge that. And I think Richard Gauntlet as Urak does a good performance, because it's quite a hard job. But due to an interview with him, we discovered who one of the other people up for the Doctor was, because he was in a play with Hugh Futcher, who is another sort of diminutive, eccentric performer. Hugh, he's in episode 1 of The Sea Devils, and they saw him for the role of the Seventh Doctor. So they were clearly going for the sort of Troughton-esque vibe, and I think on this they've got Dermot Crowley's audition, which is quite Troughton-esque as well, which I think was a good move after the big sort of overbearing Colin Baker, to try and recapture some of the sort of pixie-like qualities that the Doctor can have. We haven't had a pixie-like Doctor in this era, really. I mean, Matt Smith is quite Troughton-esque and quite McCoy-esque, actually. That brilliant look at his eyes, that brilliant sort of melancholy. Nice to know who they were looking at as alternatives. Oh yeah, we like the double pulse. Yeah. And I think he's quite sweet here, isn't he? I see. Which is very helpful. Although, no. That's very sweet. Now, interesting that she goes, I know about regeneration, of course, because we just need to get over this and get into the story. Whereas, of course, every time the series is relaunched now, I think they make more of a meal of regeneration in order to bring in, casual viewers who might go, well, I'm gonna, I haven't watched it for ages, but I'll watch to see what the new guy / gal is like. So that's interesting that what they're trying to do here is not draw attention to the fact that they've sort of summarily dismissed their former leading man, and they just want to sort of convince you that it's business as usual, which is a legitimate approach. But I think now what you try and do is you try to do a bit more explanation. Would you? Yeah, I think so. I think Four Eyes thing is great. And Bill Dudman, I think, did a lot of this model work. Who's the film cameraman, William Dudman. And I don't know if Kathleen Dudman's husband, who is also, I think, called William, and the Curse of Fan is named after Bill. He was one of the first people that got in touch with me when I did my Who's Round podcast. He worked on Theory from the Deep as some sort of junior lowly assistant guy. But he shot all the model work for season 24 and kept it. So if any of it's on the disc, I think some of that must have come from Bill, because I passed it on. I don't know if they might have already had it, so I'm not taking full credit for that. But Bill certainly gave me all the stuff that he shot on a DVD that he kept. Kept all the StarCop stuff as well. So there they are, two old mates. And I like their costumes too. I like the colour scheme. And the Doctor is 953. Now, Colin had said, I'm a 900-year-old Time Lord, hadn't he? Although in Silurians, John Pertwee talks about living for several thousand years. But I think that's pretty definitive, because it's a plot. Well, it's not a plot point, but it's a jeopardy point that 953 is his age, and the Rani's. So the Rani's TARDIS is made of CSO. Which has got better since the Pertwee era, but you can still spot it, can't you? Because bits of her legs disappear, and it's very hard with that hair, with that wig. But it's not a set that's in it for long enough to justify building a set. You can tell there's quite a lot of moisture in the air of the quarry for what it does to Kate O'Mara's wig and Bonnie Langford's hair. Bonnie Langford's hair, by the way, is amazing. Look at that's incredible hair. I don't quite know how she keeps it under control, because I've known women with hair, and it takes some wrangling, but especially of that volume and that curliness. I like Donald Pickering, but I do think he's better served as a villain. But he does a perfectly good job as Bayes here, but he has that sort of that Britishness that he has, that sort of quite clipped delivery that he has, I think makes him particularly good. I think he's brilliant as Captain Blade and he's very good as Ison in Keith's Mariners, but Captain Blade in the Faceless Ones is a superb study in cold villainy. I love we've just seen the Rani go into a base which, to add to the glitter gun and the space tinsel, has painted blue rocks outside, because we've got some rocks, how do we make them space rocks? Spray them blue! There's a lot of stuff like that I quite enjoy, even though I don't think I should. So the idea is that the Rani is collecting lots of geniuses, and I quite like that because it means you get the cameo from Einstein, which I think is quite sweet. I wonder if they considered getting Patrick Moore or David Attenborough. That would have been it would have been awful, but it would have been nice in retrospect. I can't even remember what the cliffhanger to this episode is. Oh yes, I can. It's doesn't he go into the Tetrap place? Yeah. She's still. I'd forgotten she dressed as Mel for quite this long. Does she stay as Mel for the whole thing? I don't think she does. And it's quite revolutionary, the idea of going, well, let's have a Manning Time Lord, and the twist is it's a woman, because women aren't allowed to do much. But actually, this has got quite a high female quotient in the cast. He was handsome, wasn't he, Donald Pickering? I know. I had his autograph once on a theatre thing, and I think my mother cleared it. Well, I had some theatre programmes with stuff that had been left behind for me by a friend at the Grand Theatre Wolverhampton. I had him, I had Dursley McClendon, I had a couple of the guys, I had Carl Forgione from Ghostlight, and they were all in a drawer in a desk, and I think my mother cleared them out, because I don't have those anymore, which is very sad for me. But I haven't lost too many things over the years, because I like to think I get paranoid about losing things. That's great, and the lighting there is very nice. The lighting suddenly got much better. In fact, the lighting should be at this this kind of level all the time. It would be better. She's game there, Kate. She pulls that off, although it is quite stodgy. And this is the cliffhanger, because and this has been nicely set up because we've seen that sort of whatever it is, and it looks a bit like sort of gooey blood coming to feed the Tetraps. So this has been nicely signalled. So we know this is some sort of dangerous place. And they look great hanging upside down. I remember they were they on one of, was it the original Target cover? Was just them hanging upside down in a photo? And I think there was a kind of, we're not. That's come on. This has got a new Doctor and the Rani in it, and you've just grabbed a photo of the monsters. Did they ever use that? I think it may have just been an original try that was then, rightly vetoed. But they're great. That idea of having, and they look good. They look like bats, and I think monsters that are based on things we sort of understand the biology of. It gives us a little bit of an in, and it makes them sort of convincing. Yeah. And that's quite nicely shot. Yeah, I'll take that. There we go. Am I enjoying Time and the Rani enough? Which, remember, and it's difficult as well because most of the stories I'm watching for this I've watched relatively recently because I watch Doctor Who all the time. So it's really odd watching one I haven't seen for at least a decade. Tony Redster, the production manager, died recently, and Fagetta I interviewed. I think her first credit was on, well, not credit, but her first time on Doctor Who was the Macra. She did a lot. I liked her. She's a very nice woman, and I enjoyed her. She's on a Who's Round if you want to check it out on my Big Finish Who's Round podcast. Jeff Powell, we've never found Jeff Powell. I know he smoked a lot because I think he drew a lot of his designs on the back of Benson and Hedges packets. So I'm pausing that, and I'm going to see what have I just paused? Oh, I've just paused Netflix. Right, hang on. Right. So before I go over to Anthony, my favourite thing about Time and the Rani episode 2 is well, I did Bonnie Langford as Kate O'Mara as Bonnie Langford for part 1. So I'm going to go for what I nearly went with for part 1 that still feature in part 2, and that is the bubble traps, which I think are a terrific special effect and stand up well today, and they were good at the time.
Okay, so Mr. Hadoke has just been enjoying himself immensely through part 2 of Time and the Rani. What can we say about it? Well, again, there's lots to say, but one of the things I mentioned is these guys here, the Tetraps. I think they're a fantastic monster. They are different. They're bat-like. Okay, they look like dumpy blokes, but there you go. But the 4 eyes is just a fun thing as well. Seeing how they use the camera work to show that. So the reveal is in this episode, and they're rather fab. But I think what we have to talk about specifically here is pretty amazing guest cast who are most of them doing their all to the script. Whatever you think about it, their performances are just taking it completely seriously, as of course you have to do. But we have Donald Pickering, who has of course been in Who before in the Faceless Ones. We have Kate O'Mara being a wonderful on only a second return, and she's so great that she has become part of Doctor Who lore just from 2 stories. Everyone's always going about where's the Rani coming back, but you can't really imagine the role without Kate O'Mara. But the person I want to mention here, and the highlight of this episode, is somebody who I have always had a thing for. I don't know why. I just think she's utterly amazing and wonderful. And in fact, when I finally got to meet her a couple of years ago, after I came away, I had a little cry. I was just so happy, and she was wonderful. And Yeah, so highlights of part 2 is the amazing, the incredible, the utterly beautiful Wanda Ventham.
Yeah, no, I could have gone for Wanda Ventham, and especially her tears, because as I say, real tears are very rare in classic Doctor Who. It's not often you see sort of, that kind of genuine emotion, so vividly done. So that's a good choice, and I think probably a better one than mine. So I will tip my hat to Anthony, whilst also, so yeah, so it's 2-0 to Anthony. So I'm hoping this is not a premonition of what's going to happen with the football on Sunday. I'm recording this in the lead up to the European final, in which England are in for the first time in my lifetime. Whereas Time in the Rani for me was on, well, half a lifetime ago. Goodness me, more than that even. How old was I when this was on? I was 13, 14. Gosh, now I'm 47. Gosh. Well, I've had two sets of, have I had two sets? So 14, 28, 40, I've had two of the amount of life I've lived by the time this was on, I've lived twice over. Oh my God. Oh, the humanity. Well, look, it flies by, so we have to grasp it and enjoy it as much as we can. And I'm very much enjoying the company of somebody who, as I say, always injects a bit of positivity and joy into everything. And that is Anthony Townsend, who is teaching me the ways to love Time and the Rani. And so please just listen out for the GoFundMe at the end of this, if you possibly can, just to help Anthony at a difficult time. That is not why Anthony did this. Anthony did this before any sort of diagnosis was made. Anthony did this to join in the fun of being in Happy Times and Places, and was one of the very first people to agree to do it. But I've been eking out the McCoys because they were snapped up, and there are so few of them, and I want them to last, obviously, through as much of this podcast as is possible. This was just a timing thing for why it's taken so long for this one to come out, which was actually going to come out a lot later had I been left to my own devices. But anyway, I'm happy to bring it forward to coincide with the recent release of the season 24 box set as much as anything else. So you've had Dragonfire, now you've got Time and the Rani. We've got 2 more episodes to go. So leave the VAM. It's the episodes I want. And we'll do another one next time. Thanks for listening, and if you are, for watching. And I will speak to you again on the planet Lacursha next time.